The University of Rochester welcomes InterSECT JobSims, presenting Taking a Deeper Dive in Exploring Careers with InterSECT JobSims, a recorded webinar from May 21st, 2020.
Well, why don't we get started? And I'm sure we'll have some other people entering. I am going to include some of the material from last week's sessions in the chat. So there's a link to the video and a link to the presentation. If you are willing to, if you could share either in private to myself, Eric Vaughn, I'm the host, and then Alyssa Clark is also a co-host. If you would be willing to share with one of us your email address, and we can make sure that you get the last week's presentation and this week's presentation, both the video and the PowerPoint after today's session. So just in the chat feature that's on the bottom of your Zoom screen, it says chat. You can either private message myself, Eric Vaughn, or Alyssa Clark. So today's session, and I had a cheat sheet up, but I don't know what I did with it. I think today's session was entitled, we're going to go in more depth based on what we talked about last week with exploring careers and job simulations with, oh my gosh, InterSECT JobSims. It's Thursday. It's only Thursday. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Nguyen, who's going to talk to you a little bit about and continue our conversation from last week. And again, we will share the information from last week so you can catch up if you didn't attend last week.
Thank you. Good morning, y'all. Thank you to Eric and Alyssa for hosting this session, inviting me to have it. I am really excited about today's conversation, and I hope that it will be interactive for y'all. And I heard that the sun was shining out in Rochester recently, so hopefully you've gotten some vitamin D and you're feeling good, and bring some of that energy to today's conversation. So we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive. I'll give a summary a little bit about what the platform is as a reminder to those who signed in last week, or for those of you who are new to the conversation today. And thanks for those who are just spending time with each other today as we explore careers. And so before we get started, because this is an online space, and today we will be sharing, I'll be asking if you'll participate in the conversation by sharing on a whiteboard and in the chat and in some Google Slides. I wanted to go over a little bit of a participant's pact. So today we're gonna respect each other and show professionalism and be present. And so please use appropriate language for the interactive parts. And in terms of respect, we all have different identities and backgrounds, and we welcome each other's voices. And presence. This is the time that you've signed in, and so use this time, use the mind hive of all the colleagues that are here, and of Eric and Alyssa and I in the room. And I always like to point out that this is a picture of a bluebonnet. I grew up in Texas, and it was bluebonnet season, and I like flowers, and so I'm sharing this with you. And so as we get started, what we're going to do today is I'll give a little bit of an intro summary into how you can use job simulations to explore careers. And we're going to set a little bit of a vision about what you want to get out of it. I think it's helpful to set some sort of intention, like, like for yoga, whenever you go and you're saying, what do I want to get out for today? And help you to kind of focus today's actions and work. And then we'll walk through a job sim. And then we'll dissect a little bit of the skills that you might want to get out of it and want to develop. And also, I think, see how well your skills are set to complete some of these work in other areas, career fields and career families. And then we'll talk about how to do the self-reflection. We're going to go to your calendar and set some goals, and we'll talk about why that's important. And then I'll go on to Imagine PhD and my IDP for Imagine PhD for humanists and social scientists, and my IDP for the life scientists, biomedical scientists, to show you how you can sync up with other platforms to keep yourself even accountable. So before we get started, I'm going to play a little bit and ask you to play a little bit on this whiteboard. And so whenever I teach my course, I always like to ask the students what kind of energy they're bringing into the room today, just to kind of acknowledge that we're all in different places, and for me as a presenter, to kind of gauge where you're at. And so if you're high and you have a lot of energy, and maybe you're watching this on the treadmill, or you're, you know, kind of speed walking as we're doing this, then I'll know to kind of try to match your energy and try to adjust this to you. So what you can do for the whiteboard is, if you go into your, there should be an annotate function, and then under whiteboard annotate, and then you can create, either you can draw something or you can text, right in a little text box. And so if you would go ahead and write in a number here. Thank you.
And the whiteboard is accessible through the View Options feature at the top, I believe, and Annotate.
Thank you. Great, so we have a couple of 8s in the room, got a 9, got a lot of really good energy today. Okay.
The sun's out, T.
The sun is out. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. We do draw energy for the sun. Wow, a lot of 8s and 9s today. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Sasha, for sharing in the chat box as well that you're 9. Oh, the sun, wonderful. Okay, so I also wanted to ask y'all today, in 3 words, what would you like to get out of, oh, an 8.5, thank you. Don't worry, you can leave it there. In 3 words, what would you like to get out of today's work? You'll be doing some reflection, you'll be doing some exploration, some reading, some sharing, and the words can be actual knowledge you'd like to get out of today, or it can be something a little bit more personal, like I would like to get a little bit more confidence in my choices, or I would like to, you know, and so it's your kind of what your goals for today, or your intentions for today. Tips, motivation. Yes, and you can use the chat if you prefer. So thank you for those who have found it there. Oh, and Stephanie, yes, welcome to you and your daughter. Career exploration insight. Actual, actionable, tips and actual actionable. Great. Starting points. Clarity. Options. Great. So it seems like for some of us here, with our high energy, we want to use and put that energy towards getting a little bit of a starting point and looking at options and maybe clarifying, getting a little clarity on what's out there, on what you want from what's out there, and get some tips and actual actionable items. So great, I think you have come to the right place. So we'll try to achieve these for you and do it together. One more question for you before we get started. Which career areas are you interested in exploring? And if you're not aware of options yet, it's okay. You can focus them on the tasks you want to do. You can say careers in writing or careers in publishing, or if you do know something specific, you can say I'm interested in medical science liaison jobs, or I'm really interested in policy advocacy jobs. So kind of get an idea of who's in which areas we're looking at today. Clinical trials. Policy, medical science liaison, MSL, great. MSL. It's like a guessing game as someone is drawing it in. Nonprofit, biotech. It's a lot of science-related ones, or biomedical field, education policy and leadership, education, research. I think we have some humanists in the room too, so don't be afraid to share. Great. All right, so we span lots of different sectors here today, which I think will make the conversation interesting as we then learn from each other about what you find interesting and what you learn from going through this exploration. All right, I have one more, but that'll be, oh, thank you. Yes, writing, publishing, advocacy, and education policy. And I think that's one thing that's really interesting about this person who just shared is that you may find that you're interested in different fields and different areas, or the tasks that you're doing, writing, publishing, advocacy, and education policy, you might find in one particular job, or maybe it's split over other ones. So how do you think about how you put yourself in a place where you're getting to do the tasks that you enjoy and in a sector that you would find that you could contribute to? So great, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the slides now, and I will be sharing this with everybody, so you can have the slides at the end of the conversation. I realized I did it again today, Eric. I didn't introduce myself. So my name is Nguyen, and I have been in the world of career coaching and developing career resources for PhDs for about 6 or 7 years now. And what I really enjoy about the tasks that I get to do as a professional in this field is I get to get information from a lot of different areas and sectors. I get to digest that information and kind of communicate it back out in for me, this online tool or a presentation or through teaching to other PhDs. And so I specifically talked about it that way because I think what you'll find is that a lot of the careers that you're looking into today will use a lot of the skills that you already have: teaching, digesting a lot of information, communicating maybe complex things, and writing. And so the questions that you'll ask yourself today are, with whom do I want to work? What kinds of information do I want to work with? Like, I'm working with career information, employment information, workforce information. Do you want to work with policy information, clinical trial data, educational curricular plans and things like that? And so that's something to think about. And I also wanted to share that my path from PhD to now in the last 10 years has included, I would say, like 10 different kinds of jobs from, most recently associate dean. I've been a program director, a ghostwriter, a grant writer, program evaluator, made podcasts. And I only share that because your path to where you might be 10 years from getting your PhD will also look, you'll get a chance, I think, to use a lot of the skills that you've gained along the way, and maybe incorporate some of the things that you like to do in terms of hobbies as well. And I think career planning and career goals and journeys can be fun. So today's goal for going through InterSECT JobSims, to give a little bit of a brief reminder from last weekend for those who are newly joining in, is that InterSECT JobSims was created as a way to simulate daily tasks that PhD professionals say they perform. And so they're true to task. What we did is interviewed professionals who hosted interns in their office or in their space, and ask them about what typical tasks that they might perform. These job sims were also created by PhDs who performed internships, who then wrote them up for the library. And so we wanted to reflect true tasks you might be doing in your first 1 to 3 years as a PhD. So we asked very specific questions about what might you be doing in an internship, or as a new professional, what are some tasks that are typical? And they're designed to be completed in 1 to 8 hours. So we try to draw out a process for each of the job sims about if you were to compose a fact sheet for policy or for advocacy that you might then send to a congressional staff member member or to a representative in a congressional office, then these are the steps you would take. And if you would like to try it, maybe first you're identifying the person you're going to write, and then you're going to be doing some background research and reading about the things that are important to this person. And then you'll begin to draft bullet points, and then you'll write a brief of some sort. And if you wanted to complete the whole process, it might take days, it might take you know, a couple of hours. If you wanted to just get started and see how you like it, and get a taste for it, then that might take an hour. And so for today, what we're going to do is very much skim the surface and see what you might like to read about in terms of, again, the people that you might be working with, the information that you might be working with, and the timelines and organizations. So in terms of a job sim experience, we've built this to where you're not only doing the job simulation, but providing some opportunity to reflect as well, because whenever you're doing any kind of work within research, for example, you do a ton of reading and then you have to think and digest it. What is it? What are the next steps you want to take? And then you move forward, and we're kind of building in that system into the job sim. So there's the job simulation itself. We find that students and postdocs who have gone through this find that they're more likely to complete the tasks if they set actionable specific goals. So we'll talk about that. We find that students and postdocs who go through the job sim experience get actually the most out of it when they then talk about it with another professional, get their perspective on it, and get a little bit of a deep conversation about what it looks like for them. So we provide an informational interview guide. And then finally, there's a self-reflection, because again, it's important for you to say, what did I like about it? What did I not like about it? And not to say that you won't have jobs that won't comprise some component that you won't be doing, but if you can kind of stack it where most of the week you're doing things you enjoy, then that's a pretty good balance. And then asking yourself at the end, do I want to continue in this job or not? And so I kind of see it as, you know, you're going to an ice cream shop and you've got a ton of different flavors and you're going to get a little taste. Can I have a taste of that? I have a taste of that. And the question you're asking is, are you going to get the full scoop here? Are you going to, you know, get the milkshake? Are you going to do the sorbet? And that commitment to try something is hopefully what you'll gain from this experience. So then the actual job sim is, we'll dive into that a little bit more, provides the background for a job area, the process that it lays it out, and then you'll do one particular exercise, and the write-up or the deliverable or the product you'll create is typically a written document of some sort, although we have podcast options and let's see here, mostly written documents. We have an interview we're working on too. And then you have resources to get you started, because we want to make it, again, as easy as possible for you to give this a try. All right. So I share that in our work in doing this at other universities around the US, is that people have told us that this really helps them to kickstart the process, and it forces you to try something rather than thinking about it. And then that's what we're going to do today. And then overall, it does help enhance their knowledge. Can an hour to 8 hours help you? And it does, because again, it helps you think about the people you work with, some of the terminology you might use in the field and the way that they talk about data or research or information. And that gives you a little bit of acumen in the field. And it allows, trying out this job sim experience allows you to reflect on your skills and experiences. And in terms of helping make career decisions and narrowing down options, hopefully at the end of the experience that can provide a little clarity for you as well. All right, so before we get started, let's see here. I'm going to send a link into the chat. And what it does is it'll take you to a handout. I have a colleague who uses handouts really well, and I was thinking a lot about how we might utilize that today. But before we get started, it's really easy to dive into something and say like, oh, I like this, I like that. Oh, let me, sift through all of the information. If you're going to, the actual library and you're looking at all the books and you're considering all the things. But I'm wondering if we might start today instead setting up a little bit of vision for what you want with your future work. And by work, I mean your future workplace, the future work you want to do. And so I've talked about this, frame a little bit. What types of professionals might I be working with? Information I want to work with, organizations I see myself in, timelines, meaning I like to work quickly. I'm talking about like quick turnarounds, or I don't mind working on things in a longer arc. Set this for yourself. And so what you'll see is, I've created this interactive workspace. So pick a sheet, and I'll go to one that hasn't been written on so that you can kind of see. So in the second column is your vision. So let's set that before we start looking at the different job families and job tasks that we have in the InterSECT library. So again, just set for yourself. And maybe you don't know for sure. And so maybe you don't know what kind of professionals you want to work with. Maybe you want to still work with faculty, and that would be okay. Or maybe you want to continue working with scientists, but you don't know what that looks like. Or the information you want to work with is clinical trial data. Or maybe I want to work with curriculum planning with little kids, or something like that. And so fill out what you can for your vision, and then we're going to work through it. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box. I'll give you about a minute.
And does everybody have their own sheet?
Yeah, do we have enough?
Do we have enough?
I think so. I think there's 9 people and there's like 12 sheets.
Oh, good. Okay.
And also, if you don't feel comfortable working in the shared space, if you want to copy and paste it into another document, please feel free. I see some people starting to type in. I was going to say I see some people thinking, but I actually can't see that. So I use this framework because I find sometimes it's easier to give yourself options to think about. Whenever I was going through this once with another graduate student, when I talked about organizations, she kind of lit up and she said, I've always wanted to work for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. How do I do that? And so I think opening yourself up to other things besides what do I want to be, or what do I want to, what's my next career, can really help you focus on doing the kind of work you want to do. Like, I want to continue doing research, but I'm really interested in kind of business data. Or I want to continue doing research, but I'm really interested in patents. Or I'm really interested in healthcare or public health. Or I'm really interested in, whatever it is. So getting to that level of insight into the way you like to work and the kinds of things you like to work with might inform the way that you explore. And I think people don't take the time to do this. And it can be helpful, right? Like, you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to go and see what's out there, and today we'll be able to do that. But again, being able to compare it and do that self-reflection of, this is something that I have always been interested in, or this is something that is new to me. Do I want to continue exploring it or not? I see people starting to type in some. I won't go to the specific slides to give you a little bit of anonymity in space, but I see that people are typing in, so great. And you can continue to amend this, of course. It's fluid, it's not set in stone or anything like that. This is just a space for you. And I see some, there might be multiple people in one slide, and so there's plenty of other slides if you'd like your own space. You can change the background color if you want to. All right. So now what I would like to do is introduce you to the InterSECT Library if you haven't yet gone in. And let's see here. So to explore careers then, as you're thinking about some of the things that you've written down, working with professionals or working with the type of professionals or information you'd like to work with, the way that the libraries are organized are by science simulations and humanities and social science simulations. The science simulations are based directly off of the IDP job families, and the humanities sims are based directly off of the Imagine PhD. And so what you might want to do is you can browse through and pick one. So let's say here there was some interest in education and policy. So policy is a similar one for both. I'm going to pick that as an example just to go over today. And so I'll go through a quick overview, and then I'll give you a chance to do some searching yourself and read through for a few minutes as we go through this session today. So the way it's set up is that you can see that this one is the humanities composing a fact sheet. The actual task or simulation is condensing information into talking points for a congressional staff member. So we give a little bit of background about where. So you'll be working in this simulation on Capitol Hill. And the organization that you'll be working on, depending on the organization, you'll be sending out fact sheets to congressional offices. So as you see that, there's a Senate hearing or there's something going on, and you see that they're reading like, oh, this is the percentage of people who are affected, these are the counties, or this is why it's important, and these are the data. Those fact sheets are compiled by people who are putting them together. It requires a lot of research and a lot of thinking about different parts of the community. And so for this particular one, you can pick, of course, for policy, you can pick any issue that's important to you, but we picked one just for time's sake, right? So you can think about funding for the NEH. And on the science side, it's funding for the EPA. And so for this particular one, you're going to write a fact sheet to a representative of your choice. And we say, typically these would go to a congressional member who sits in the appropriations subcommittee. And so you can look for somebody in there, and we give you links for how to search for that. And so the task itself is you'll identify the senator or representative and what they care about. You'll be looking at, we give you some factors to think about: economic, personal, political, financial impact. And then you'll do the actual searching. And where do you search? And we give a little bit of support on where to get started, to look at budgets for agencies, look at federal data, look at state data, look at polling data, look at something that's already out there in the news media in terms of op-eds and census information. Then you can also create graphics if you want. And we give you some challenges to think about. And then you would create the actual deliverable that can be used by somebody who's giving a speech or writing a paper or writing a letter. And then we give you resources to get started. And what's going to be important for today too is we're going to take an examination at the skills. So on the right here, there's skills that are used for this task. So writing, research and synthesis, mental adaptability, condensing large amounts of information, research, communication, and writing. You're like, yeah, I do those things. So what about this whole career field? It looks like you'll also need, beyond those, some problem solving, leadership, and teamwork. And so thinking about if some of the things you wrote in your vision sheet about you wanted a career that's a lot of writing and you want to work with people in policy, maybe this is something you want to try, or maybe it's something broader like I want to make a big difference, and so maybe this is something that you want to try. And so we try to give you also that these are typical responsibilities for someone else in policy, and their goal in the next couple of years is to have a job sim for each one of these bullet points. And then we'll talk about how to set up your SMART goals and do the self-reflection sheet as well. And so this is an example of one. Let's go over to one in the sciences. So I saw a lot of interest in the medical science liaison, so we can walk through that one really quickly. Where do I have it? Okay, it's under support of science because that's where it's listed in the MyIDP. So for an MSL position, again, this is narrowing in on one particular task that's very common for an MSL and for a specific type of organization. And I share that because if you find that it's really interesting to you, that's really great. But if not, this isn't the end and all and be all of what all MSLs do. So this particular task is providing scientific information to healthcare professionals. So you'll communicate relevant scientific information about, say, a specific disease or therapeutic area. So there's a little bit of background about what MSLs do, where they might work, and the kinds of backgrounds that they have. And in this particular one, when you contact somebody, when an MSL contacts somebody, here's the process, right? You're selecting the audience for the drug, doing the research, finding out information, and then actually reaching out. And this particular one is focused on the actual reaching out. And so for this exercise, you're budding MSL who's building a network, which is really key for MSLs, and also for FAS. It's a field application scientists knowing who to reach out to, who's the person in the field to talk to and to get information from and to give information to. So in this particular one, you'll select a clinician or clinical research in the field and list facts that you think are most relevant. Then you'll actually write the pitch, because the pitch is important depending on the type of audience you're writing. As you know, the audience is important. Are you writing to a health professional? Are you writing to an academic? Are you writing to a person who runs a hospital? That might be different. And then we ask you to draft the outlines. So as you can see, if you're doing the research into the people, the key opinion leaders, and the pitching the information, you might be able to do that in an hour really quickly. But then if you're drafting an outline to get a really feel for it, that can take a little bit longer. So we suggest, you can write it in terms of a presentation or an email, and we give, some examples of what this might look like. And this was created by an MSL. And we give you an example pitch. We give resources to get started, and then again, you can look at the skills that are used in this particular task and in the field in general. Do you like networking? Is that a skill? This is a skill that you'll need, and not to say that so if you're an introvert and you really don't like networking, this doesn't mean that this isn't for you. It's just, how would you do the networking in this field in a way that is true to you? And there's a lot of handling rejection well. And if you don't like that, it's not to say, one thing, absolutely, delete this because you're like, I don't want to be rejected all the time, sending out emails and not getting responses is not something I can, I enjoy or I want to handle on a daily basis or a week-to-week basis. Or if this is something you're really interested in because of other values that are important to you, then you're like, okay, well, how do I build in a system or a support system or a way for me to handle the rejection or think about it in a different way? So this just gives you a little bit of insight into what you might be working with and maybe how it aligns with your values or not. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. So, and then we always give credit to the person who created the simulation. And again, it was vetted by professionals. And so I wanted to take a minute now and just say that if you are wanting to, you can browse it obviously by the library. You can just go to the library and browse, or you can think about what you wrote in your vision and you can search for it. And so let's see here, where was my search bar? I think it's covered by my, okay, so here's the search bar. You can also say, I'm interested in nonprofit. So that was something that somebody wrote. And then it will pull up some job areas that are possible in nonprofit, right? So maybe try the organizational management. So you can also search by skills, organizations, professionals, and types of information. And so I encourage you right now to take a couple of minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, to search through some of the job sims and take a look at what kinds of people you might be working with, what kind of tasks you might be doing, and the kinds of organizations you might be working at. And you can fill out that third column of your sheet, of your handout. And if you have any questions, you can share them in the chat. Or you can unmute and share too. That'd be really welcome.
T, one thing, one question I get often, can I, and this is Eric, can I utilize, a lot of the graduate students and postdocs I work with will utilize this. Can they use it to as maybe a conversation piece during an informational interview with other individuals?
Yes, absolutely. It's highly encouraged. And it can be really helpful. So I think you can think about it in different ways. And so it's always great to talk to professionals about what they're doing in their job to get some insight from them. If you've done a job simulation or you've looked at a few and you want to talk about it, you can talk about what that particular task looks like at their organization, kind of, affirm some assumptions that you have, like, oh, whenever I was doing the work on the MSL, I read that you have to build a strong network from the beginning. Is that the case for your organization? Did you get a little bit of a contact list already? Did you have to build it? When you were building it for the job sim, I wrote up a slideshow. Do you find that people that you're working with prefer slideshows? Do they prefer emails? Do they prefer Zoom conversations? And so you can kind of see what it's like for them, because then you're doing research into what that looks like in their organization and their particular role and how that might align with what you're expecting and what you'd like to do. So absolutely. We held a session, so when we were holding sessions in person with using job simulations, what we did is, so one particular one is we held one with actually 2 MSLs, and one worked for a large company and she had a large region, and she self-identified as an introvert. And then the other one worked for a small company in a small region, and he self-identified as an extrovert. And I thought it was important to kind of have 2 professionals with different personalities talk about how they do the networking and how they see themselves in the field. And what we did in the session is that we went through the first 2 tasks in groups, and then held a Q&A with the 2 professionals. And it does become a little bit about how often are you using that skills? What resources are you really using? Do I need to get the MSL certification? What books are you reading? And it really helps having a little bit of background knowledge about the task and the terminology that you might be using in a field to make that conversation a little bit, what's the word I'm looking, like a little bit of a deeper conversation.
The other question I wanted to bring up, and if we have somebody that's looking for a specific area, but it's not covered under either the STEM or humanities, what can they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is a living, breathing, dynamic library. And so what we're, if you don't find an area that you're interested in, then one, let us know and we'll do our best to work on it if it's something we can find a professional for, and usually we can. And the other thing is that if you're interested in, if there's one you don't see and you want to build it, I think that's actually a great way to explore a career area. And we've had graduate students do that. So last week we had Francis Anderson on, and he just completed his PhD in brain and psychological brain sciences. And he was interested in writing. And so I encouraged him to create a job sim. And so what he did is we give you a protocol with the questions to ask and make it as easy as possible. That's like our motto at InterSECT, make it as easy as possible. And then he interviewed a couple of professionals about what that task looked like, that writing task specifically at a university. So what does a PhD who's interested in writing do if they work at a PR office or at the newspaper on campus? And then he built the job sim. And what's really great about that is not only are you contributing to the library, you're adding a gap that we had at, filling that gap, but then you've built some network and you've got some experience. And then also the product that you create, you get co-copyright on it and you can actually put it on your resume. So I would say if that's something you're interested in, and the time it took Francis or the typical grad student or postdoc to create it is about 3 or 4 hours with some editing and that kind of thing. Or you can let us know and we'll work on it, though it will take longer. So that's the other thing. If you're interested in timelines, right? Like I would like to see it in the next month. Let's work on it together. If you don't mind waiting a couple of months for it, then let us know. Let's see here. How are we doing? Let's see here. I can observe just from the slide view that it looks like we're still exploring and not yet putting in our observations, which is fine because there's I think a propensity for PhDs to do a lot of like taking in of information before we start putting it down. We'll just take another minute or two. And again, this is just a frame that hopefully you can take with you as you continue on the job search, as you do this iteratively, because you will be doing this iteratively. Like, I'm interested in this career, how do I approach this? And so it's okay if you don't put anything in today, but I would like for you to kind of see this as a way that you can move forward in your career exploration. Do you find yourselves, and you can share in the chat, do you find yourselves exploring one? Or are we doing like kind of like a cherry picking, like testing, tasting kind of approach? What do y'all find yourselves doing as you use the library? Definitely, Manisha. Yes, it does require some thought. We're doing like the speed train version of this too. This is something that if I were to give this worksheet to a graduate student or do over class, we would do this over several weeks. So absolutely. taking you to the ice cream shop and like giving you all the ice cream right away and asking you to tell me what you think. Okay, so we went over different job sims. I'm going to move forward just in the interest of time and work through this. Thank you, Andrea or Andrea. I'm looking at simulations I've already thought about, okay? And if we have questions later, do we contact you? I think that we can, I think maybe since I'm happy to share my email and be a resource. I also think that Eric and Alyssa are really great resources to talk to. So I think reaching out to any of us about your questions. Hopefully we can get them answered. All right. So one common response that I get from people who go through the job sims is actually a very pleasant surprise that they have a lot of the skills already, or they're like, wow, this is something that I can do if I build a little bit of knowledge in X, or wow, this is something I can do, I just need to polish my writing portfolio or something like that. And so I wanted to take a moment to talk about your skills and do a little bit of an inventory. So based on the job sims that you've kind of skimmed through, which skills do you already have and which skills would you need to develop? And so in your slide deck here, there's a space for that. So skills that you have already that you would need to complete this task. Why don't you write some of those down? And then what skills would you like to develop? And these can be skills that you already have and you want to make them better, or maybe you don't have them yet. And I think this one in particular is important to talk about, because when you write it down, then we're going to make decisions about whether you, if this is something you want to proceed in, how you're going to make the time for it, or allocate time for it. I guess we can't like fabricate or make up time, but how do you dedicate some time to it in incremental ways, actionable and specific ways to make progress on this, so that in 6 months you've maybe identified a course and started it, or started talking with somebody. So this is something that can be helpful to think about in terms of skill building.
I might have missed, I was messaging somebody that had a question. Did you respond to Rain's question?
Oh,
repeat.
No, thank you for asking. Would you also repeat what we're supposed to put in your observations? Yes. Yeah, your observations as you go into, as you're looking through, whatever job sim you're reading through, who are the professionals you're working with within that field? And so if you've gone through a few, maybe you're finding that you're drawn to job sims where you're working with scientists at academic institutions but doing something non-bench. Or maybe you're drawn to working with people at nonprofit institutions and you're working with financial information or something like that. And so this is your place to kind of distill some of the observations that you're making as you're going through the job sim that you may not even realize that you're doing. And maybe the timelines, maybe you're really drawn to the journal editing and the writing ones because the turnarounds are quick, right? Like the daily writings or the weekly writings. Or maybe you're not drawn to that and you're wanting to do more like broad conversations. Yes, it's like a reflection. Very succinct. Thank you, Sasha. Great. And you can also search the job sims by skills as well. So you can say, I'm really interested in jobs where I'm editing. Maybe I'm not writing from scratch, but I can edit like a pro. So then you can write editing in. And so there's journal editing, triaging papers, editing grant proposals, different kind of social media marketing requires a lot of editing. That's a really interesting one, actually, the social media marketing. There was an English PhD who did an internship at a nonprofit organization it's called Gift-A-Meal, and what they did is they set up actually I won't get into the details, you can look at Gift-A-Meal, but it's a really cool social community platform. But she was doing marketing for them, and she was researching what restaurants were saying about their products to get them to join the platform and talking about that. And she had a very specific genre to write in, right? And she, you know, was doing tweets or different kinds of, so the challenge of writing very concisely in a very engaging way. And she became, she quickly learned and mastered that, and they trusted her then to start doing some intelligence, competitive intelligence about, okay, well, what are other platforms doing? And she started to get, you know, involved in the strategy of it. So I think you might find that sometimes the work that you're doing will lead you to have more responsibilities depending on the organization you're working with. So that was, it's a fun story. So, right, so there's different mediums you might be working in, so that's something to think about. And then this one was working in the research development office, which is a great place where a lot of PhDs land if they like to do a lot of reading and thinking about science, but not necessarily at the bench. Right, absolutely, Sasha. It's a great way to explore new fields when you're thinking about career changes. All right, so let's keep going. And so reflection, we've talked a little bit about this already. As you're going through, I really do encourage you to think about what you liked about the sim, what do you want to keep reading about it. And within the JobSims site, there's a self-reflection. We have a tab for each of those JobSims steps, so there's a reflection guide. You can either do it online, we have like a Google form that you fill out and then it sends it to you, or you can print the downloadable version. So it's available for you there. And then what I wanted to kind of talk about next is setting your SMART goals about actionable items that you can take. And so whenever you are writing out the things that you want to do, it helps to calendar. And I will show you a little bit of a SMART goals thing here. And then it's also helpful to bring somebody else in. It can be a peer, somebody else here in the conversation you want to connect with later, to have a mentor or a coach like Alyssa or Eric to walk through with you. That accountability can help. And this, you know, one step at a time is important, because you're not saying, I'm going to, you know, run a marathon. You're saying, I'm going to become a runner. And so what does that look like? It looks like, you know, getting some running shoes. It looks like going outside and walking on the sidewalk and looking at your route. It's all these little things. And so that if your goal is, you know, to become an educational policy leader, what are the goals in terms of how you start to learn about that information and the types of people? It's one step at a time. And so as you go into now the SMART checklist, SMART goals here, we have already populated a checklist for you that's recommended. So this is a copy document. So what happens is I have this in my Google Drive, and you make a copy of it for yourself so that you can self-edit, do whatever you need to, and it won't change the master form. And so this is just for you. So it looks like this, and it auto-populates to start with today's date. So today's the 21st. And it suggests that, you know, in the next 3 days, select a job sim and complete it, you know, 1 to 8 hours. And then do the self-reflection sheet. And then read about the informational interview guide that tells you how to talk about a professional, some questions to ask, a cadence for the conversation. And then identify 2 possible professionals. You can either talk to Alyssa and Eric about the alumni areas, or you can look on LinkedIn. And then email them. And then I said a 10 business day thing because, you know, getting back and hearing back and scheduling and all that can take some time, and then sending a thank you note. And then what I would encourage you to do is take some of these and then put them into your calendar. And so if you want to open up your calendar and kind of put some of these in, you can. I won't spend time on that right now because I know we have some, like we're a little, I want to get to some other things, but this is what a SMART goals checklist can look like. And of course you can update it. If you're like, okay, well, I don't think I'm going to take that long, or I would like more time. Of course, this is your checklist now. And so you can change it as you wish. All right. So back to setting your SMART goals. Okay, so I had mentioned this at the beginning, and other participants have shared in evaluations that they got the most out of a simulation experience when they performed the informational interview. So they actually were able to confirm their assumptions and learn about different work environments, and when they actually utilized the SMART goals checklist. So I encourage you to do both of these things. You can also use Imagine PhD and MyIDP. So I wanted to just quickly go to these sites and you could see how you can do it. So within MyIDP, there's this, Imagine PhD, there's the tabs at the top. And one for your own goal planning is under My Plan. So you could click on My Plan. And I put these in last night as an example. What you can do is there's different goals by degree completion, career development, skill development, personal development, money and funding, and let's see here, the other one is, okay, and then show all. So what you can do, you can see I've created some here. You can add a new goal. So if the goal is job simulation, then you can say, you know, pick one or do one. And this category is going to be a career development goal. And I would like to send a reminder on the starting date. And I aim to do this by, I don't know, Monday morning. Actually, it's a holiday. Please take Monday off. I'll do this by Tuesday. All right, so then I'll create the goal. And then it shows up there, and you can find it in your career development tab. So this is how you would set a goal that would keep you accountable, because the platform will email you. And so maybe your first step is create an Imagine PhD sign-in login, right? That will take 3 minutes. And if that's all you have time for today, at least you're one step closer. All right, for the sciences, you go into myidp.sciencecareers.org, and then what you would want to do is create, under the sidebar, there's personal information, so you can edit your personal information. This is built off of Bruce Albert's actually the scientist who authored the cell, and he's at UCSF and he's in policy and that kind of thing, but it's kind of, you set your email preferences. You can write your email address that you want to get the information, and you can say, send me my monthly email goals. So that's where you do it here. And then you go into the goal setting section on the left, and then you can set your career development goals as well. So it tells you about how to set a SMART goal if you want to read a little bit more about it. And then, all right, Cam, thanks for calling in. We'll make sure we send the slides. And then you can set your SMART goals in here as well. Again, you can say, you know, like, you know, contact to MSLs, and then no, I don't want to do this all the time, or yes, I would like to build my my contacts monthly. You pick a start date, and then your target completion date is I'd like, you know, by June 8th. How will you be accountable? I'll meet with Eric or Alyssa and chat about it, right? And then you can add your SMART goal. All right, and that's how that works. And then they'll email you your monthly goals. All right, and then I wanted to kind of open it up for Q&A, but before I do, to continue your exploration, it's one small thing at a time. So create a user account, do the assessment, write in 1 or 2 goals, think about the skills you want to do, and then meet with one of the career advisors that we have on the call today. So thanks for participating. My aunt, Madeline, who is an excellent cook, and when she visits, she cooks for us a lot. She always used to say, thank you for eating. If there's nobody to eat it, there'd be nobody to cook for. And so thank you for calling in today and participating and being present and respectful and professional. And I wanted to open it to Q&A if y'all had any other questions.
I just wanted to say thank you, T. This was wonderful, and I even learned a few new things today, so that I didn't realize I could do before. So I'm going to put those into practice with what I do.
Great. Yeah, I still use an IDP. It really helps me to think about my goals and putting timelines and deadlines on them. It's an important practice that you can use at any stage. Oh, thank you. Thank you for calling in. Let me know if you have specific questions about different job areas too. It doesn't have to be about the process. Anything, any questions that you may have.
And I do want to share, this resource is open to anybody to use. There's no cost to use it, and we do have some links off of the Center for Professional Development website. So this is available to everybody to use.
Yeah, we have stats. Actually, I don't know if y'all are interested. Why not? I look at the stats of who visits the site, and we have visitors internationally. So that's pretty fun to see. I'm like pulling back the curtain now. I don't think I've shown this to anybody, but here we go. Let's see here. So we can see like today we had 30 visitors. Yesterday we had almost, 90 visitors. We almost had 100 on Monday. Monday is the most popular day. I think that's the day people are procrastinating or just, I think motivated. And so we see here, right, in the last, let's see here, we'll look in the last week. And you can see, I think this is really interesting too. So since lockdown here, the numbers have kind of doubled. So we have almost, a couple hundred visitors a day from different places. And so, and then, I can see which simulations have been most interesting to people. And so, yeah, it's open. I love that. And so I'm happy to share this. And that's, I think, why it's powerful too. If there's an area that you want to explore, you want to write about, please become an author, a code developer on the site, and then you get the copyright. You can put it on your resume, or just keep exploring it. Let us know what you think about it. So,
any other questions? Feel free to unmute your mic or put your questions in the chat. If not, we want to thank you for participating today. We still have about 3 minutes until noon. So.
I put the link for the Green Center's resources, which certainly SMD students can also use, but InterSECT, if you didn't get the link already today, is linked on our website as well. So just so everybody knows.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I remember, there's students who will go through this in a session and they'll read through. We'll have like, today we're doing, journal editing, or today we're doing something, and they'll read through and they'll say, actually, just reading through it, I don't think I'd like to do it. Like, okay, that's great. That's a great discovery to have about yourself. So what other simulation are you going to look at today then? And I think it's that easy, right? You can read about it and try something. Thank you, y'all.